Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of IDTALK4ED Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, and if this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, I welcome you, and I hope that today's episode is one that you will find informative, enlightening, and insightful. And if you're a returning listener or viewer of the podcast, I hope you experience the same thing. So, before we get into the main event, just a reminder for folks who are on YouTube, please hit that red subscribe button so you can get future notifications on new episodes of the podcast. Also, if you're listening from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. And then for those who would like to contribute financially to the growth of this platform, and it's always helpful when we have some donors. So we thank you for those who have been doing that. You can do it in 4 different ways. If you're on Cash App, you can use our handle $IDTALK4ED. If you're on Venmo, you can use the handle @Kwame SM. That's KWAMESM. And then if you're on PayPal, you can use the URL paypal.me/Kwame SM. It will take you directly to the payment page. And then right now, we are still on Patreon, but we will soon be migrating to another site, which is our home website, the Identity Talk consultant page, where we'll have the same membership tiers as we currently do. So if you are currently a patron, thank you. If you want to become one right now, you can go to the Patreon website and subscribe there. You'll get behind the scenes footage of the podcast. You'll also get some perks as a token of our appreciation for all the support you've given us over the years and many more things. So make sure you tap in there. And then, of course, to catch new and future episodes of the podcast, you can go to the website identitytalk4educators.com. And I got some fantastic news for those who haven't been following me on social media. Learn to Relearn has earned itself an IPPY Gold Medal for Best Education Book for Commentary and Theory. And I'm going to be honest, when I first wrote this book, the goal was not to try to win an award or even be a bestseller, even though those are things that are great. I was just hoping to write a quality book that would support educators globally in terms of being able to honor different students' identities. And I feel like it's already accomplishing that in the 6 months it's been out. And I'm so excited for the things that are on the horizon, which are many things, which I'll talk about when the time is right. But for right now, if you haven't got your copy yet of Learn to Relearn, make sure you go to your closest book retailer, online or in person. Also, if you've read the book and you love it, a 5-star review is always helpful to spread the word about the book and to grow our community. So please make sure you leave an official review, either on Amazon or Goodreads, wherever you leave your reviews. And to learn more about the book, you can go to our main website at learningtorelearn.com is where you'll find everything about the book. And once again, thank you all for continuing to support this project that is going to impact so many young people. Thank you. All right, people. So now let's get to the fun part. We have ourselves a special guest, and all my guests are special, but today's guest has a story that I believe will captivate a lot of us who are listening or watching today. And there's so many things I could say about this person. This is actually a person who I've never had the chance to meet in person, but we've been able to cross paths in different circles in the international school space. And she's actually been someone who has given me some game and has helped me out in terms of even trying to get opportunities in the space. So I'm very fortunate for her to be here to share a story and to just showcase how dope she is. So without further ado, I want to bring on Constance Darshea Collins to the podcast to talk about her life, her journey in education, and all the things she's doing right now. So we're going to bring Constance on right now. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. It's great to be here, and you're the inspiring one. Let's just say.
I appreciate you coming, and listen, you have a story that I know is going to really help some people, which is why I wanted you to come on and share that. But before we get started, how are you feeling? I know you just made a move out to the Asian continent after being where I am on the motherland for a number of years. So tell me about the transition.
Yeah, I'm now in Singapore. I moved from Uganda last year, and we're in the last 2 weeks of school right now. I know by the time this is published, I'll be summering somewhere, but it's the end of the school year, and transitions, as you've recently transitioned as well. Transitions can be tough, but there's so many opportunities that come with transition. So I'm in that reflective process right now of just thinking about like what this transition has meant for me personally and professionally, and like where I'm going from here.
Yes. So that's always important to do, just reflect on the long year. So
Yep.
many things to process and to unpack. And you don't get that time when you're in the thick of things.
Right, exactly.
Not at
Because
all.
you're just in the midst of it, and I keep saying to everyone who's coming, like, you're almost at the end of your time I'm at Singapore American School at SAS. What do you think? And it's like I need some space away from it to really reflect well on what this experience has meant and what I can take away from it truly, because I'm in the struggle right now. I'm in the midst of everything, and I just need that space and distance for a little bit. It's a good struggle. What do they call it? Productive struggle. That's what
Productive
I'm in.
struggle.
Productive struggle right now. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right, cool. Well, let's start from the beginning. So, growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, ATL. I've had a
Hmm.
lot of ATLians up in this space, so you're just adding to that community. But tell me about that early upbringing and what led you to want to do this work that we love called education.
Yeah, so yeah, I am an ATL girl, like ATL through and through. Not born and raised, but moved from California when I was young, and I loved learning from an early age. Like I loved school, not just learning, but I really truly did love school. I loved going to school. I loved just like the process of learning and the socialization that happened in school. Not everything was a positive experience, but I think that I really enjoyed school partially because I felt like it was something that I was pretty good at. Like I like to read and I like to do math and science. And I was that one student in the front of the class, like trying to answer all the questions. And I was the annoying student, actually. Like, didn't we have homework? And everyone be quiet, Constance. Yeah, it was, there are some things I'm reflecting back on, like, ooh, no. But I really enjoyed school, and I loved reading and writing, and I thought that I was going to be I wanted to be a journalist. That's what I thought I wanted. And when I got to university, I did an internship at a news outlet in Atlanta, back in Atlanta, and it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it might be. It wasn't great, and I wasn't getting that inspiration that I needed to continue. And I was remembering one of my teachers, my 11th grade teacher, Miss Kamisha Lynn Perry. She would say her full name in class, Kamisha Lynn Perry. She was my English lit teacher. And there was one time that she had us actually lead a lesson. Every student had to lead a lesson. Now that I'm looking back, that I'm a teacher, I'm like, oh, like she had a
Mm.
whole like 20 days or so of not having to lead the lessons. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed being leading the class. It was really fun. I brought in a lot of creativity. It was so much fun for me. And her class was great. I learned so much from that class, and I had an exceptional experience with her as my teacher. Whereas I didn't have that with all of my other teachers. I had some great teachers when I was in high school, but as a whole, there were some gaps. And when I was in college, it was it was very apparent that there were some gaps in my learning compared to some of the other students. Not just academic learning. I still felt pretty decent academically, but there were some things that both socially and academically that students like me who came from public schools and students who like some of the black students, there were gaps in our education, and we would talk about it. We would talk about some of the opportunities that some of our peers were getting and that they had access that some of our peers had. I went to Yale, which has, there are so many different socioeconomic classes, and you could see some of the kids who went to private schools, just some of the differences, let's just say, and some of the inequities. We would talk about it. We didn't think at first it was so easy for us to think it was something about us that was deficient or we were missing something. But then upon further investigation with my peers, we would talk about like our experiences in schools and that we were not getting equitable experiences in schools. So
Right.
I was part of a after I kind of gave up a little bit on the idea of journalism because that wasn't fulfilling to me in that way. I joined an organization in college that allowed me to go into the community, into New Haven, Connecticut.
That's where I'm
And
from, actually.
oh, that's where you're from. Wait a
Yeah,
second.
I
Okay,
grew up
we're
in
gonna have to talk
Connecticut.
about
Yeah,
that. Okay.
north part though, Bloomfield. So about 15 minutes from
Okay.
Hartford.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
So the demographic makeup of New Haven, and we went into schools, and I mentored an eighth grade girl, and I really enjoyed it. Her name was Zuleika, and she was full of personality, and it was it gave me the spark that I thought that journalism would. Um, and I really enjoyed my time in school. And so afterwards, I was considering what I was going to do next, and I thought it was going to be human resource management in education, because I was like, how are we bringing on teachers? Like, how are we vetting teachers? What are we thinking? I had gotten into the human resource management um, program in NYU. And when I was talking with the director about where I wanted to go, it was so apparent to me that I needed to be in the classroom before I just jumped to human resource management and education, before I just went to that program. So I decided, you know what? I need boots on the ground. To understand the experience of teaching, and it's been that's where I started. It was looking at the inequities that I face personally in higher education. It made me reflect on the experiences that other students were getting. And I joined the classroom, and I haven't looked back since then.
well, listen, we could use some human resource management even now. That's a whole episode that we could dedicate, given what's happening in our international schools. We're not gonna open that can of worms.
Oh, yeah, recruitment. But yes,
Yeah,
that's
there's a lot. There's a
yep.
lot there with human resource management. But I want to go back again. You mentioned that during your K-12 experience, there were some low moments or moments where you may not have had teachers who related to you or had the impact that you would have liked for them to have. So, can you tell me some of those other challenges that you may have had and how that may have had an impact on how you saw yourself as a person?
Yes. So I had a really unique K-12 experience. I moved around quite a bit. And even though it was within Atlanta, Atlanta Public Schools, Fulton County Schools, and also California, between the two places. And part of my elementary school experience, I was in mostly predominantly white institutions or schools. And I remember at a very young age when I was the only black student in the class. I was also in like a talented and gifted program, and I was the only black student there. And there were so many spaces that I was the only black student, and I was like first grade, second grade, third grade, these grades. And there was an awareness that I had even at that young age that I was different. I didn't feel that I was having the same experience as others, even though now as an adult I can articulate it. But when I would be with with my friends, my mom made sure that I had black friends. We would talk about our experiences in our childish way, or as kids. But we didn't know what exactly that meant. So that was one way that I was shaped. I remember, but my mom was great because she ensured that like I always knew who I was. Like you need to know who you are. My third grade, just a quick story. My third grade teacher, she when I was new to the school in the middle of the school year, I switched schools in the middle of the school year, and I told her my name was Constance, and she was like, Connie. She started calling me Connie, and I started writing my name down as Connie. That was how I started. Everyone called me Connie. That was just what it was. And even though I had never gone by Connie, I didn't choose Connie. That's just what I became. And then my mom saw my name on a piece of paper, and like on a worksheet or something, Connie. And she was like, "What is this?" And I was just like, Connie, that's what they call me in class. And she said to me, and I will not forget, she said, Your name is Constance. That's your name. Like, that's what you're going to be called. And I didn't feel like she was like, You have no right to be called Connie. I didn't feel that I needed to be called Connie. Like, I just went with it because Miss Sheftal said my name was Connie. But
Mm.
I'll never forget that because now I go by Constance Darshea Collins. I'm like, I'm gonna use my full name. Like, let me use every part. Like I am. She was like, you are who you are, and no one calls me Connie except for my best friend. But now to transition, so my mom was great and even instilling in me a sense of pride in who I was or
Yeah.
who I am. But then to transition, when I got to like middle high school, particularly high school, my high school experience was with a predominantly black school. It was like 97% African American or black. Let's just say black because it was black folks from across the diaspora, and and that was an interesting experience because it was great on one hand. It was a fantastic experience in instilling who I was and helping me to understand like my blackness, black culture was centered in everything that we did. And all my teachers, like most of my teachers were black and very proud and they went to HBCUs. I learned so much about their experiences. And also, I believe that in some ways they weren't holding us to high expectations as I think they could
Mm.
have. We had some teachers who really believed in us, like Miss Perry, who she had a sign on her wall, no one rises to low expectations.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that because she held us to the highest standards. But I do think that there were some teachers that were there who saw us, and maybe I now that I hear the way that folks talk about students, maybe we were high risk youth or free and reduced lunch majority. They may have had these perceptions of us that, and we weren't held to the highest standards. So I've had those two experiences in education, and they've shaped me deeply.
Hi friends, it's me, Thaddeus from Thaddeus Nature Notebook. Are you loving our journey into the wild and learning all about awesome animals? Then don't forget to subscribe. You can find Thaddeus Nature Notebook on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Just hit that subscribe button and never miss a new episode. And if you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and leave a comment about your favorite animal. Thanks for listening and exploring nature with me. Let's keep discovering together. Now back to my daddy's self.
Yeah, that's so amazing because I don't know if folks realize this, but I'm talking to a career Ivy League student. And this was how she was brought up in Atlanta, moving to different schools, having these experiences, but you still arrived at that destination. So I want to talk about that piece. I want to talk about you moving from the South and then eventually going up to the Northeast, starting at Yale,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually doing some master's programs in Columbia, and then eventually you go to Harvard. But talk to me about how that experience intersected with some of the things you were exposed to in those institutions, because we know there is some culture shock. There is a lot to see when you make that transition. So I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about how those experiences intersected and informed your journey.
Yes. My experience and how I'll shift from like the transition from high school to college and how that continues to resonate with my experience as a professional. In high school, I made such great friends. They, I just made the best friends, and I felt that I was able to get close to the girls and boys in my class in ways that I just was not really able to at my other schools for whatever reason. The schools that were predominantly white. And there are layers to this. I'm not going to, do a deep dive. This is this is a podcast, not a marathon or audio book. But when I went to Yale, I it was very important for me to find community, and I was able to find community as a track and field athlete, uh, which is very important to me and part of my identity as an athlete. But in the Black community,
Mm-hmm.
that was a very important space for me. It was so important that just recently in March I went back to Yale to reconnect with it is called the Afro-American Cultural Center at Yale, or the House as it's affectionately known. It was a space for students, Black students, any students. All students could go there. It was for Black students, but anyone who had an interest in Black culture, the diaspora. I want to be very specific about that. The Black diaspora, not just African American, even though African American, we have our history that we might touch upon in this podcast. But it was very important for me to find that community of others who shared my identity in that way. Other Black women, other Black girls, Black men, Black athletes, just to feel that I could be who I am, I wasn't getting the questions about my hair. Did it grow 10 inches overnight? I was able to just let my hair down a bit and feel that I could be myself. And reflecting on that, because as a professional, I do seek out affinity spaces. I feel that I can I can navigate almost any space. I feel comfortable navigating all spaces, and I have friends from all walks of life and with all identities and backgrounds. But I still do seek out affinity spaces, because even though we're making great strides in these institutions to ensure that that we're cultivating a sense of belonging for all people regardless of their identities, that's not 100% the reality
Right.
at this point. And we need safe spaces that we can let our hair down and we can talk to people who might get it, who understand that some of the intricacies and nuances of our experiences, they might be able to relate or share, and people who have shared ancestry, and we can just discuss when there are culture days, like as a Black American, it's like, do I, I don't know if I want to put on a USA something, a USA garment, but then also we're so disconnected to our ancestry
Mm.
because of the brutal history of the slave trade. Like I can talk to others who get it, and that's important for me to carry on in my professional life. And hopefully we get to a place. I mean, I think affinity spaces will always be important, but hopefully we get to a space where those aren't the only safe spaces, and we can cultivate more safe spaces and institutions.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the fact that a lot of guests who come on here share a lot more intimate and personal stuff than they would in their school communities speaks to what you're saying. Like, we don't have a lot of those spaces where you can even be that open and be that vulnerable because you're afraid of potential backlash for being
Yes.
honest, potential backlash for being real, being authentic, showing empathy to another colleague or student. So there's a lot of things there. But I want to talk to you about how you even got into international education because you go through your years at Yale and then you're doing some work post grad, right?
Mm.
But you come across this bug of international education. So tell me what led you to want to even teach abroad and make that transition.
Yes. So international education merges two loves for me. I studied abroad in university in France, and I loved it. It was great. I'm a learner, like the Strengths Finder, Clifton, or whatever, the Clifton Strengths Finder is learner. Like, I love to learn, I love to explore, I love to just experience new things, and travel brought me joy. And every summer when I was teaching in the States, I would travel. I would go abroad. I would explore new places, and I knew, like, I felt alive when I was traveling, and I was like, how do I make this how do I turn this into a career?
Hmm.
How do I merge travel with my career, rather? And I found international education. That was once I learned about that, I was like, that's all me, because I feel when I travel, I felt, and I still feel when I travel, I'm more open. I'm experiencing cultures and way, like I'm always growing, and you're always growing in the classroom anyway. I don't want to
That's
take
right.
that away, but I feel that there's an additional layer when when I'm international. I have to navigate the nuances of new cultures, new languages, new people, and I recognize the differences, but also some of the things that connect us. And that's how I learned about international education. So when I did go to Teachers College, Columbia University, I studied social studies ed with the intention that after I finished, I was going to go abroad, and I wanted to go to the continent. I had only been to South Africa at this point. I had been to South Africa and Kenya, and there was another layer, an additional layer to how I felt just alive when I was on the continent. So I started off in the Congo, in Kinshasa, at the American School of Kinshasa, TASOC. And it's from there I moved to South Africa, Uganda, and now I'm in Singapore.
And yeah, and that's just amazing. And just being on the continent and being able to see Black people with pride, seeing reflections of yourself, seeing reflections of your ancestors, right? Just being in a space where you're not an anomaly. You're an anomaly in other ways, but
Hmm.
in the end, you still feel like you're more at home than you would if you were back stateside. At least that's how it feels for me. And I would assume that you experienced those same things when you were on the motherland.
Yeah, yeah. It is a complex. It's complex because
Yeah.
I loved it, and enjoyed my experience in all three places. And I also have to be had to, and I have to. I traveled back with my students to Ghana actually just a few months ago with my students from Singapore. But I have to remember that I do hold certain privileges as well, and there
Right.
is that tension. Like there's that tension that yes, I am black, but I don't have the same hurdles when I'm trying to get to another country of like tons of paperwork. Um, I I don't have the same hurdles when I'm dealing with certain people who, based on my accent and the way that I speak, or based on my passport, make certain assumptions that I'm a safer type of black. I recognize that, and I name it as much as I possibly can. That I feel so connected, but also I recognize the privileges that come with being an American, but also the the disconnection because of the history. And I always want to make that known when I'm talking to folks. Like the history is it's so tragic because I can't trace exactly where my people are from. And as a history teacher, I I feel like
You haven't
it's
done an ancestry chest?
Mhm. I have, but I have, and it's Ghana actually. Like it's mostly Ghana. So I have looked, but it's Ghana. There's Congo. There's pieces, bits and pieces everywhere, and that makes me feel even more connected. Actually, I have to say, because I could say, y'all know what? I'm claiming everybody. Like I'm from here, 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 here. Like thank you. Like this is y'all are my cousins. I'm like, y'all are my cousin. You my cousin, Kwame. I'm just letting you.
You said all I heard was Ghana, so we connected just on that end. So yeah, that's what's up. But even as you're thriving in this international school career, it doesn't come without hardship, right?
Mhm.
And you've been someone who's been very open about your health journey and the things that you've had to overcome. So more specifically, having to go through a kidney transplant and having ups and downs even with that. I can imagine, as someone who grew up and was an athlete, you're probably thinking to yourself initially, I'm pretty healthy. I work out. I was running track and field, doing all these physical athletic things. How does something like that happen to me? I'm just thinking that's your initial thought, but I'm wondering, when you did go through the kidney failure and eventually got your transplant, how did that change your perspective professionally, but also just on life in general? Because we know this profession is one that could take a physical toll on us. So when
Mhm.
something of this magnitude happens, you have to make some wholesale changes, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Whew. You really touched on something about the athlete part, and how at first it felt like my body was betraying me because I was diagnosed when I was in college with
Yeah.
kidney failure and lupus. But that's a whole nother topic. But um, when you are faced with chronic illness, let me speak for myself. I can't speak for everyone who's faced chronic illness. You really have to reconsider what really matters, what's at the core. And time is sacred, joy is sacred, and I because of what I faced, I've always come out on the other side so far. And it has built a resilience in me that there's no obstacle that will land on one side of me that I can't overcome. I really feel that. I mean, eventually there will be one, but we ain't gonna talk about that now. But that is, but but this is something that I like to share my story, because I truly believe that we can move through things that might seem insurmountable. I try to like with this is bringing it way down to my students. I'm like, Okay, you did not do well on this quiz, this test. You didn't do well in this class, or you're still growing. You'll come out on the other side. We will come out on the other side, and in the end, what really matters, like education, for instance, isn't just about metrics, but it's like what's at the heart. I'm always looking at what's at the heart of everything, and I
Right.
believe at the heart of everything is love, is joy, is like connection with others. That's what that's what that's what's at the essence. Like, when you're faced with your own mortality, if I'm just gonna really like break it down and keep it 100% like
Please.
real, when you're faced with that, you really have to keep close what's important. It's the people around you. It's the time that you share with folks. It's joy. Joy is it's making the most of the time that you have. It's being present. And this is what I try to share with my students and with my colleagues. I think so often we're running towards some, like, what's next, what's next, what's next,
Mm.
achievement, and I'm guilty of this as well. But it's, am I taking time today to appreciate, like, this conversation that I'm having with you, this meal that I'm having? Am I taking time, like, yes, I have report cards to write right now, but I can also take time to have lunch with somebody. Like, these are the important things. Yes, you have an exam coming up and you want to ensure you're studying for your exam, but also take time to go for a walk. Like, I think we can move so quickly, and professionally and personally, just towards our goals, or towards the next thing, that sometimes we just should pause and look at who's around us and appreciate that and make the most of it.
Are you ready to take your commitment to identity affirming education to the next level? Then join the forum, the new and exclusive membership space for the Identity Talk community. With membership tiers starting at $3 a month, you'll get early access to podcast episodes, bonus content, our Quam's Quotes monthly newsletter, and monthly live Q&A sessions. You'll also unlock discounts on workshops and products, engage in community discussions, access exclusive community and networking opportunities, and even business ad roles during episodes if you're a sponsor level member. Whether you're an ally, advocate, co conspirator, accomplice, or sponsor, there's a place for you in the forum. So head over to identitytalk4educators.com /pricing plans /list and join the movement today. And I'd have to imagine that you going through the health scare and being international, that had to have shaped your perspective or have had to get you thinking about even the inequities when it comes to access to health clinics, for example,
Oof.
and other resources. And I want to tie this to what you do with regard to service learning, because I know that's your jam. And there's been some growing conversation around what service learning truly means. What does it mean to actually serve, right? Because I know for some, it's really a grassroots effort. It's really an exchange of knowledge. It's really an exchange of culture, an exchange of different funds of knowledge. And then there are other examples where it seems more like a saviorist project, right? And it's something that doesn't feel like it's equitable. So
Hmm.
I'm wondering how your personal experience has helped to shape your approach to service learning.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. It's really helping me spin my wheels. I'm going to actually share my experience at my previous school, in the International School of Uganda, where I was
Mhm.
the service learning coordinator. And that's Uganda is a place where I noticed the some of the inequities and healthcare disparities that existed in the country. And I founded an organization called Transplant Uganda for other transplant recipients, solid organ transplant recipients, who there was not like a community, and I've benefited from being in communities with other organ transplant recipients in the United States and in other places. I founded this organization, and it was almost like service learning in action for me. It was almost like a modeling. I had to work through some of my own ideas of what service learning is, um, through the founding of this organization. So some of the core tenets of service is that you are working in partnership with the communities. I did not go to Uganda and say I'm about to set up ship. Like I actually started off with working with people who were in the transplant community, and there was not an organization that brought everyone together. So I say I founded it, but I founded it with a group of people. So I was working in partnership with them to identify what were the needs. And sometimes service can be misconstrued as throwing money to a problem and that will solve it. And it's like, no, that's not at all what meaningful service. Yes, you can get, that's philanthropy or
Yeah.
community service, spending time with somebody for a day and then going about your business. But I found that in the establishment of this organization and growing it, it was about the time that I spent just getting to know the landscape of transplantation in Uganda, get having them giving them the opportunity to know me, feeding off of each other's strengths. So asset based service is really important, looking at the strengths that we each bring to a particular issue. And I'm modeling this for my students. We also had the organization. Luckily, ISU was very open, and we forged a relationship with the with the school. But we were working from assets. We were looking at what strengths we brought to address the issues. We were working in tandem, me and the others who were on the board, and they're now a fully functioning, self-sustaining organization. And the time, so there's time that's spent together, there's working collaboratively, there's looking at assets. It's not just about money. It's, money can be involved, but it's the intellectual resources. It's about redistributing power in some ways. Like, I have access to networks, in global networks of transplantation, and I was like, hey, how do I make those connections to this organization? The networks that I have to the people who are on the ground in Uganda, and that's something that our students can do. They it's you may have your parents might be in finance or in law or in whatever field that they're in. How can we connect communities together to address some of the problems that that we're facing? And that's what I was doing with Transplant Uganda. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, because I lived through transplantation, and I've benefited directly from the love of people who have given me organs. And I wanted to pass that on, and I've been privileged in that way. It's about me taking the privileges that I have been afforded as someone who has received an organ transplant, whereas there have been people, including folks in my own family, who have succumbed to lupus and kidney disease. I am someone who's still here. I'm still standing, and I have that privilege. How can I take that and use what I have to support others? And that's what I hope that our students, the thought process that I hope that they walk away from, our schools have. What do I have access to that others may not have access to, and how can I bridge that gap? So that's what I tried to do. That's what I want for them.
And I think it's very important to even go through that reflection process because, as you know, there's been a lot of transition happening back in the States. We're seeing a lot of governmental agencies that do provide health services to a lot of countries, particularly on the motherland. Same
Mm,
agencies that have funded hospitals, that have funded NGOs, local NGOs, that have employed thousands, millions of people, and now they're being shut down. So when we
Mm.
talk about access to quality health resources, it's real. And
Yes.
because of that, yeah, because of that example, you have to be very intentional about what service learning actually means and the ramifications that people are experiencing as a result of a lack of access. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no. I mean, that is so real. It's one of the reasons why I love travel is because it shows us, it reveals to me how connected we are.
Yeah.
How connected we are. Like my humanity is connected to your humanity, is connected to that person's humanity who's out there, to everyone. Like at the core, the love that I have for my family, everywhere that I've been, that same love exists. Like compassion, honesty, like some of these like core values that a lot of us hold, they are no different in these places. And I think sometimes we move away from this. I've heard people say, well, why are we giving people in this country, why are we supporting these people in these countries that I've never even heard of? Why are we doing that? And it's like, I think we feel so disconnected from each other just because
Yeah.
of borders, because we don't look alike, because because of gender. There are so many things that people can, so many identity markers that people can look to as a source of division. And I think there's so much beauty and diversity, but also like, what about our shared humanity? Like I say to these people, why not? Why shouldn't we support others? Why shouldn't we redistribute resources? And let's not get into how we've sucked so many resources from the African continent. Like
Mm,
it's not, I mean, this is our duty, but I'm not
that's
going
right.
to just get into, that's a duty, because we have pillaged these places, and these countries are what they are because of that pillaging. But taking all that away, I mean, just on the surface, we have access to so much. And when you have access, I believe that we have a responsibility to bring people with us. And that's what global citizenship that we talk about in schools, like, isn't that what it is? Like, we're connected. We have a duty. Citizenship is about duty. Like, if we talk about citizen, I'm not about to get into the breaking down of words or whatever, but it's about the duties and responsibilities that we have as humans to each other, to ourselves, and to each other. So here, just want I want our kids and our educators to know the responsibilities that we have to each other and to ourselves, and to reflect on it, not know, because I don't know what everyone thinks their responsibility is, but I know what mine is.
And then as we begin to wrap up, I want to give you a chance to do some reflecting because it's about to be summertime. School year is about to end. So, to add to your reflection plate, I want to ask you this question regarding your time in international schools. And you've been in a number of different countries. You just finished another school year in a relatively new country. I want you to tell me two things. Number one, what has been the greatest lesson you've learned in your time in international schools? And what is one thing you've learned about yourself throughout that process?
What I've learned is our connectedness. I think it's just connected to what I was just saying, that
Yeah.
the core values are what connects us. And I've just learned that there's so much beauty out there, so much beauty. You just have to take the time to sit with people and learn about folks and learn about places. And there's so much richness that comes from international education. The parents that I have the privilege of engaging with, the students who I learn so much from, my colleagues, the institutions themselves, for better or for worse. So that's what I've learned. Is that a lesson? Yeah, the connectedness, connection, to put it in a word.
We'll
And
take it.
then one thing that I've learned about myself is that I'm unfinished. I mean, I'm constantly evolving. I actually love that about myself, I have to say. I love that. I'm probably gonna listen to this 2 years from now and be like, "Oh, who was that?" Okay, I have grown a lot since that moment. At least I hope. No, I know, because this is what I've learned, that the more I don't know everything, like there's so much to learn that's out there, and I'm unfinished, so I'm constantly evolving, and that's that's what that's what grounds me. It used to scare me, but it grounds me now that I have a long way to go, and it's
Yes.
exciting.
God willing. God willing.
Willing.
Yes. And then the final question is the one that I ask everybody on this platform. How do you stay true to the teacher in you?
I mentioned at some point in our conversation that my Clifton strength, even though I don't need some outside resource to tell me what my strengths are, but for those people who love data and all that kind of stuff, my biggest one is learner. And I know that about myself, and I've known that about myself for a while. And staying true to the teacher in me means that I'm a learner first. I'm always in conversation with myself as a learner. I'm a teacher, but that's informed by my learning, and I'm learning every single day in my class with my students. It keeps me humble, because yes, I am a teacher, but I'm a facilitator. I'm a facilitator of learning, and that learning includes my own learning,
That's right.
and I'm reflecting on that constantly. So that's how I stay true, by always positioning myself as a learner and recognizing that learning does not have to take place in a classroom. Learning takes place outside. Learning takes place right now in this conversation that we're having. Learning takes place everywhere, and that's how I stay true to my teacher self.
All right. And there you have it, people. Constance, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for just being vulnerable enough to share as much as you shared, because I know that's not something that's always easy. And it takes a lot to share that and even have to relive certain parts of that journey. But I appreciate you. I appreciate your strength. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was nice. Yeah.
Yes. And I know you're now just getting back into social media space. You took a little bit of time away and now you're back into it. But tell people how they can connect with you. Even if it's not on social media, maybe it's an email or some other form of connection. But we love to give you a chance to let people know how they can connect.
Yes, I am definitely reestablishing. I had to take some time away, just for my own mental health and sanity. But LinkedIn is a great space. I'm Constance Darshea Collins on LinkedIn. Instagram, I'm Constance Darshea. And those are primarily the two spaces that you could reach me. And I would love to hear from anyone. Yeah, have conversations about anything that might resonate, or you might want to battle it out.
Yeah. Maybe it could be a battle of bars.
Battle bars. Oh no.
Ah,
Yeah.
Binky. No, sir.
Oh, stop. Binky, not Binky. That's his brother's name. Yeah, yeah. That Could I just say one thing? That
Sure.
was for a class at Harvard, and it was. I named that because if in my graduate program at Harvard, they could accept me being a little bit creative, thinking out of the box. We could do that in our high schools, in our middle schools, in our elementary schools. We could think outside the box.
Come
Like,
on.
it's rigor is not just about what's in a text or what's on, what you write, but it could be your bars too.
Preach. Preach. And on that note, we're going to end another episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live. And as always, I want to wish everybody a good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.